It was a cold morning in a small town. The sky was gray and everything felt quiet. People were walking to work, children were heading to school, but inside a hospital room, time was standing still. Rahim sat on the edge of a plastic chair, his hands shaking. His wife, Zoya, sat beside him, holding their 10-year-old daughter, Amina, close. Amina was small and thin, with big brown eyes that looked tired but still gentle. She had been sick for weeks, and her fever hadn't gone away. The doctor had asked them to come early. "We'll have the test results by then," he had said on the phone. That was 2 days ago. Rahim had not slept since. The hospital room was small, with pale green walls and the smell of medicine in the air. Amina rested her head on Zoya's lap. She was too tired to talk, too weak to move. Rahim looked at the clock. 9:14 a.m. The doctor was late. Zoya whispered, "Do you think it's something small? Like a virus?" She was trying to stay hopeful. Rahim didn't answer. His heart was beating too loud in his chest. He could barely breathe. He just held Amina's little hand and kissed it softly. A few minutes later, the door opened. Dr. Danish walked in slowly, holding a file in his hand. He was a kind man with gray in his hair and a tired look in his eyes. But today, something was different. He didn't smile. He didn't say, "Good morning." Zoya stood up quickly. "Doctor, what is it? Tell us she will be fine." Dr. Danish took a deep breath. He looked at Amina, then at her parents. "Please sit down," he said quietly. Rahim's stomach dropped. He already knew. He just didn't want to hear it. The doctor opened the file and spoke in a soft voice. "Amina has a serious brain condition, a tumor. It is growing fast. That's why she's having the headaches and fever." Zoya covered her mouth in shock. Her knees became weak, and she sat down quickly. Rahim couldn't blink. He stared straight at the doctor, hoping he was wrong. Dr. Danish continued, "We ran all the tests. I even sent the reports to the city for a second opinion." Rahim finally found his voice. "So what can we do? Surgery? Medicine?" The doctor hesitated. Then came the words no parent ever wants to hear. "I'm very sorry, but there is no chance." Silence filled the room like a heavy cloud. Zoya began to cry, holding Amina tightly in her arms. "No, no, please," she whispered. Rahim just sat there, frozen. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing anything. Inside his mind, everything went black. "No chance?" he finally said, his voice dry. "What do you mean, no chance?" Dr. Danish looked down. "It's in a place where surgery can't reach, and the medicine we have won't stop it. I wish I could say something else, but I can't." Rahim stood up. "There has to be something. She's only 10 years old. She wants to be a teacher. She hasn't even lived yet." Zoya sobbed, rocking Amina slowly. Amina, half awake, looked up and asked, "Mama, why are you crying?" Zoya wiped her tears and tried to smile. "I'm okay, my baby. Mama is just tired." The doctor placed the file on the table and said gently, "You can take her home if you want. We'll make her comfortable. We'll give her something for the pain." Rahim looked at his daughter, his whole world, and then he looked at the doctor. "She's not going anywhere," Rahim said. "You may say there's no chance, doctor, but I believe in someone who doesn't need your permission." The doctor looked surprised but said nothing. That night, Rahim sat on the hospital roof. It was dark and cold, but he didn't care. He was holding a small notebook and a pen. He began to write. "Dear God, they say there's no hope. The doctor has given up. But I know you haven't. She is just a child. She has done no wrong. If anyone must suffer, let it be me. Please give her another chance. I have no money, no power, no knowledge, but I have faith, and I believe you are listening. Amen. He folded the paper and tied it to a small balloon he had bought from a street vendor the day before. A red balloon. Amina loved red. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "I can't reach you, but maybe this can." Then he let it go. The balloon floated slowly up, dancing in the wind, moving higher and higher until it became a tiny dot in the night sky. Down below, Zoya was sitting beside Amina, who was finally asleep. She looked at Rahim when he returned and asked, "Where did you go?" Rahim didn't answer. He just smiled and said, "I sent a message." Zoya didn't understand, but she didn't ask again. That night, Rahim didn't cry. He didn't panic. For the first time in weeks, he closed his eyes and slept. Because in his heart, something told him the story was not over yet. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the quiet town. But inside the hospital room, time still felt heavy. Machines beeped softly. Amina lay sleeping, her small chest rising and falling gently. Rahim woke up early. He hadn't slept much, but somehow he felt a strange kind of peace. He looked at Amina's face, pale but calm. Her fingers were still holding onto the edge of her blanket like a child afraid to let go. Zoya sat by the window, eyes tired, lips moving in silent prayer. Rahim walked over and placed his hand on her shoulder. "She will live," he said softly. Zoya looked at him confused. "Rahim, you heard the doctor. There is no treatment, no hope." Rahim shook his head. "There's no hope from them. But last night I sent a letter to someone greater." Zoya stared. "You wrote a letter? To who?" Rahim smiled gently. "To God." She said nothing, only watched him carefully. Rahim sat down beside Amina and took her hand. "I tied it to a balloon," he said. "I let it fly into the sky. Maybe someone will read it. Or maybe God will." Zoya didn't respond, but she turned her head to the sky outside the window, where the clouds floated softly, as if hiding secrets. Later that day, something strange happened. A nurse entered the room, looking surprised. "Rahim, someone is here asking for you." Rahim stood up quickly. "Who?" "He says he's a doctor." Rahim and Zoya looked at each other. "A doctor?" "Yes," said the nurse. "From the city. He just arrived." Confused, Rahim stepped outside the room and walked down the hallway. At the end of the hall stood a tall man in a clean white coat, holding a balloon in one hand and Rahim's letter in the other. He looked around, then walked toward Rahim. "Are you Rahim?" he asked. "Yes." "And you are?" The man smiled. "My name is Dr. Faizan. I'm a neurosurgeon from the city. I was passing by this town on my way home when something strange happened. I was near the lake and saw a balloon flying low. It had a letter attached. I read it. And I couldn't just walk away." Rahim stared at him in disbelief. "You found the letter?" Dr. Faizan nodded. "Yes. And after I read what you wrote, I felt something in my heart. I had to come. But it's just a letter." "Not to me," said Dr. Faizan. "To me it was a call for help. And maybe a call from God." Rahim brought him into the room. Dr. Faizan greeted Zoya and smiled at Amina, who was half awake and confused. He checked her files, her tests, her reports. His face turned serious. "You were told there's no hope," he said quietly. Rahim and Zoya nodded, but maybe they were wrong. Zoya's eyes filled with tears. "Can she be saved?" Dr. Faizan looked at the scans. "I have seen this kind of tumor before. It's rare, very hard to treat. But there's one way, an experimental surgery. It's only done in a few hospitals. And yes, it's dangerous." Rahim asked, "Can you do it?" Dr. Faizan replied. Yes, but it's expensive. And your hospital here doesn't have the tools. Zoya's heart sank. We can't afford it. We're not rich. Dr. Faizan paused, then said something that made them freeze. I'll do it for free. No cost. Rahim blinked. What? Why? The doctor held up the letter again. Because I believe this letter found me for a reason. Because sometimes faith needs action, not just words. But there was one problem. The hospital staff refused to allow the surgery or even the transfer. It's too risky, the head doctor said. We won't be responsible, Rahim argued, begged, but they refused. Then Rahim stood up and looked them in the eye. Then we will take her ourselves. The staff warned them. If anything happens, it's on you. Rahim didn't care. His daughter was dying. And someone had finally said, maybe. That was enough. That night, Rahim packed Amina's clothes, her medicines, and her favorite book. Zoya held her hand, whispering prayers. Dr. Faizan prepared his van for the long journey to the city. It was dark outside. The road ahead was uncertain, but inside Rahim's heart, one thing was clear. God had received the letter. And now, it was time to walk the road he opened. The city was far, almost 5 hours away by road. It was a cold, silent night as Dr. Faizan drove through narrow streets and highways, his hands steady on the wheel. Inside the van, Amina lay on a soft mattress made from folded blankets. Her breathing was slow, and her tiny hand rested in her mother's lap. Rahim sat quietly beside the doctor, looking out the window. Trees passed by like shadows. He didn't speak much, but his eyes said everything: fear, hope, and silent prayers. Zoya sat in the back with Amina, wiping her daughter's forehead every few minutes. She whispered stories into her ear, even though Amina could barely respond. It was the only way to stay strong. Suddenly, blue and red lights flashed behind them. A police siren broke the silence. Rahim's heart skipped a beat. Dr. Faizan slowed the van and pulled to the side. 2 officers stepped out of the police car. One of them knocked on the window. "Where are you going this late with a child in the back?" the officer asked sharply. Dr. Faizan calmly replied, "She's very sick. I'm a doctor. We're taking her for emergency treatment to the city." The officer looked suspicious. "Is this child yours?" "No," Rahim said from the passenger seat. "She's my daughter. We had to leave the local hospital. They said there was no hope. But this doctor, he's trying to save her." The officer frowned. "You took her without permission?" Zoya's voice came from the back. "Please, sir. We had no choice. She's dying." The officer paused, looked at the little girl, and then back at Dr. Faizan. "You really think she can make it?" The doctor nodded. "I don't know, but I couldn't ignore the letter I found." The other officer raised an eyebrow. "Letter?" Dr. Faizan pulled it out of his coat pocket. "This letter flew to me. It wasn't just paper, it was a cry for help." The first officer looked at Rahim. "You wrote this?" Rahim nodded. "Yes, I didn't know what else to do." For a moment there was silence. The officers exchanged a glance. Then the first one said something unexpected. "Go. I believe you." The second officer added, "Take care of her. Some things are more important than rules." Dr. Faizan nodded, started the engine again, and the van moved forward. Rahim looked back and whispered, "Thank you." The police car disappeared behind them. By sunrise, they reached the city hospital. It was large, with shining glass windows and tall buildings, very different from the small clinic back home. Doctors in blue coats rushed around. Nurses pushed stretchers and machines beeped all over the place. It was busy, fast, and serious. Dr. Faizan helped lift Amina gently onto a stretcher and handed the letter to a nurse. "Emergency case. Get the neuro team. I'll lead." Within minutes, a team of doctors gathered in a meeting room. They studied Amina's reports and brain scans. One young doctor said, "The tumor is pressing on a vital area. If we wait, she won't survive. But surgery could still fail." Another added, "She's too weak for this. Her body might not handle it." Dr. Faizan stood at the front of the room and said firmly, "We are going to try. She deserves that. Much. Let's begin the prep." Zoya stood outside the operating room, holding Amina's favorite stuffed rabbit. Rahim sat beside her. He hadn't said a word since they arrived. His mind was racing with memories. Amina's first smile, her first steps, her first words. Now she was in a room full of machines and sharp tools. Her life was in someone else's hands. Hours passed. 1 hour, 2, 4. Still no news. Zoya held Rahim's hand. "Do you think she's fighting inside?" Rahim looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "I think she's not alone." At last, the door opened. Dr. Faizan walked out, his face tired and sweaty. Zoya jumped up. "Doctor!" He looked at her slowly, then at Rahim, and said in a soft voice, "She made it through." For a second, they didn't believe him. Rahim stood still. "What? What do you mean?" Dr. Faizan smiled gently. "The surgery was long, complicated, but she's alive, and she responded to the treatment. It's too early to say everything is fine, but this is far more than we hoped." Zoya broke down in tears. She dropped to her knees and thanked God, again and again. Rahim couldn't speak. He just walked over to Dr. Faizan and hugged him tightly. "I don't know how to thank you," Rahim whispered. Dr. Faizan looked at the small crumpled letter in his pocket. The sun was bright the next morning, but inside the hospital recovery room, the light felt even warmer. Amina was alive. She was still weak and barely able to speak, but she was breathing on her own. Zoya sat by her side, holding her hand and brushing her hair gently. Rahim stood at the window watching the busy city below, his heart finally beating calmly after so many days of fear. But it wasn't over. Dr. Faizan entered the room with a file in his hand and a serious look on his face. Rahim turned quickly. "Is something wrong?" "No," the doctor said, placing the file down. "But there's something I need to discuss with you, and it won't be easy." Zoya looked nervous. "Please tell us, doctor. We trust you." Dr. Faizan sat down. "The surgery was successful. We removed most of the tumor, but there is still a small part left, very deep. It's too dangerous to remove with regular surgery." Rahim's heart sank. "So, it's not finished?" The doctor nodded slowly. "She's safe for now, but if we don't stop it completely, it may grow back. And if that happens, we won't get another chance." Zoya held her breath. "What can we do?" "There is one option," the doctor said carefully. "It's called proton therapy, a high-precision radiation treatment. It can target the tumor without harming the healthy brain." "Will it cure her?" Rahim asked. "There's a strong chance," Dr. Faizan replied. "But there's a problem. The treatment is very expensive, and it's only available in a private hospital in another city." Rahim sat down heavily. His hands were shaking again. "How much does it cost?" he asked quietly. Dr. Faizan hesitated, then said, "Around 25 lakh rupees." Silence fell in the room. Zoya's eyes filled with tears. "We don't even have 25,000? Rahim stood up, trying to stay calm. "We'll find a way, we always do." Dr. Faizan looked at him. "I'll try to speak to the other hospital. Maybe we can get some help. But you also need to prepare yourselves. Time is short." Later that evening, Rahim walked out of the hospital and sat on a bench near the main gate. Cars passed by, people walked around, and the city noise filled the air. But Rahim heard none of it. He looked up at the sky, just like the night he had sent the letter. God you brought us this far," he whispered. "Don't leave us now." Just then, a boy selling tea approached him. "Chai, sir?" Rahim nodded. "Yes, please." As he drank the hot tea slowly, he looked down at his phone. He didn't know how to use it much, but an idea came into his mind. What if people could help? He opened a simple donation website he had heard about from a shopkeeper earlier. He asked a hospital nurse to help him write the post. "My daughter, Amina, is 10 years old. Doctors said there was no hope, but she survived a dangerous brain surgery. Now she needs proton therapy to stay alive. We need 25 lakh rupees. If you can help even a little, please do." He added a picture of Amina smiling with her eyes closed, holding her stuffed rabbit. And then he clicked post. The next day, something unbelievable happened. The post went viral. Strangers from all over the country began sharing it. Some sent raw 100, others sent raw 5,000. A few gave even more. Messages poured in. "Praying for your little girl. Stay strong, brother. God is watching. My daughter beat cancer last year. You're not alone." Within 24 hours, they had raised 8 lakh rupees. Rahim cried when he saw the number. He never believed people who didn't even know Amina would care. But it still wasn't enough. He looked at Dr. Faizan and asked, "Is there anything else we can do?" The doctor thought for a moment. "There might be one more way, but it's risky." Rahim listened closely. Dr. Faizan explained, "Amina can be part of a medical study. A research team is testing new medicine alongside the therapy. If we join, the hospital will cover 50% of the cost." Zoya was unsure. "Is it safe?" "No child has tried it yet," the doctor admitted. "But the early results are good. If it works, Amina could get a second chance, maybe even a full life." Rahim looked at Zoya. She nodded slowly. They both knew it was a gamble. But what did they have to lose? That night, Rahim wrote another letter. Not to God this time, but to the people. "We never thought the world would care for one poor child. But you showed us love still exists. Please continue to help us. We are almost there." He posted it along with an update. By morning, the donation reached 18 lakh rupees. They were almost there. The hospital room was quiet that morning, except for the soft beeping of the monitor beside Amina's bed. She was awake, eyes half open, looking around slowly. Her little fingers held on to the same stuffed rabbit she had brought from home. It was worn out now, but it had never left her side. Rahim and Zoya stood at her bedside. For the first time in weeks, Amina looked at her parents and gave them a small, tired smile. That smile meant everything. Zoya bent down and kissed her forehead. "You are so strong, Amina," she whispered. "Just a little more. We are so close." Meanwhile, Dr. Faizan stood in his office, staring at his computer screen. A large red message blinked on the screen. "Payment due in 48 hours for treatment booking." The special proton therapy treatment had limited slots. Amina had already been accepted into the trial program, but to confirm her place, they had to pay the full remaining amount within the next 2 days. The donation page showed Rs 18,74,000 collected so far. Still short of the goal. He picked up his phone and called Rahim. "Rahim, I don't want to scare you, but we're running out of time. The hospital needs confirmation in 48 hours. After that, they'll give the spot to another patient." Rahim's heart sank. "We're trying, doctor. I've posted again and again. People are still donating, but it's slowing down." Dr. Faizan took a deep breath. "Then we have to do something different, something bigger." That evening, Rahim and Zoya sat on the hospital floor with a young nurse named Samir, who had become their friend. He was tech-savvy and had been helping them share Amina's story online. "I have an idea," Samir said. "Let's make a short video. A video that tells Amina's story in her own voice." "But she can't speak much," Zoya said, worried. Samir smiled gently. Then you speak. You and Rahim. Just from the heart. I'll record and edit it. Zoya hesitated. Rahim looked at her and said, We've already knocked on every door. Let's knock on one more. The video was simple. Zoya spoke to the camera, sitting next to Amina. Her voice cracked as she said, Doctors said my daughter wouldn't survive. But God brought an angel in the form of Dr. Faizan. Now she needs a treatment we can't afford. We are poor people. We have nothing. But we believe in people's hearts. If you're watching this, please help us save her. Even Rs 100 can be a gift of life. The video ended with a picture of Amina smiling faintly, holding a sign that said, Thank you for believing in me. Samir posted it with the hashtag, Save Amina. The internet responded like never before. Celebrities shared it. Bloggers talked about it. A local news channel ran the headline, Miracle Girl's Last Chance. India unites to save Amina. Donations poured in again. Children donated their pocket money. An old woman sent her pension. A shopkeeper gave an envelope full of coins. Within 24 hours, the donation bar reached R2396,000, only Rs 1 lakh more to go, but the deadline was just hours away. Back in the hospital, Rahim paced the hallway. Every few minutes, he refreshed the donation page on his phone. Zoya sat beside Amina, holding her hand tightly. Amina looked at her and whispered, Am I going home, Mama? Zoya smiled through her tears. Yes, my John. You're going somewhere even better first. To heal. At exactly 10:47 p.m., Samir ran into the room holding his phone. We did it! He shouted. Rahim grabbed his phone and saw the number. Rs 25-3,400. Zoya covered her mouth and cried. Rahim hugged Samir tightly. Even Dr. Faizan, usually calm and composed, had tears in his eyes when he entered the room minutes later. He looked at Amina and whispered, Little warrior, the world chose to fight for you. Now, we fight too. Preparations began immediately. The hospital called the Proton Therapy Center and confirmed the booking. Special arrangements were made for Amina's transfer. Everything was finally falling into place, but no one knew what awaited them at the new hospital. The treatment was rare. The medicine was experimental, and Amina's body was still very weak. Would her little heart be strong enough to face the final battle? The answer would come in the next part of their journey. 2 days later, the ambulance rolled out of the hospital, gate carrying Amina and her parents toward the city's most advanced cancer treatment center. Rahim sat quietly, holding Amina's tiny hand. She wore a pink wool cap over her shaved head, her eyes half closed but calm. Zoya sat beside her, whispering soft prayers. The Proton Therapy Center was in a high-tech building, glass walls, white lights, and long, silent corridors. It felt cold and unfamiliar, but they were not here for comfort. They were here to fight. Dr. Faizan handed over Amina's medical files to a new doctor, a woman named Dr. Kavita. She was tall, serious, and direct, but kind. Her case is rare, Dr. Kavita said after reviewing everything. The tumor left behind is small, but it's near a very sensitive area. This therapy must be precise. No mistakes. Rahim asked softly. Is she strong enough? Dr. Kavita looked at Amina through the glass window. Her body is weak, but sometimes strength doesn't come from muscles. It comes from something greater. Zoya nodded. She has that. The first session began the next morning. Amina was taken into a large room with machines bigger than cars. A robotic arm moved above her as lasers targeted the remaining tumor in her brain. She had to stay completely still for 45 minutes. Even a tiny movement could change the direction of the beam. Zoya waited outside with her hands clenched tightly. Rahim stared at the door, not blinking once. The light above the door turned red, then green. The first session was done. The doctors warned them, The next few days would be harder. Amina's body might react to the radiation, fatigue, pain, even fever, and they were right. By the third session, Amina couldn't sit up on her own. She vomited often. Her skin became pale. Sometimes she cried in her sleep. Zoya sat beside her, day and night. Rahim barely ate. He kept reading verses, praying non-stop, sometimes whispering, sometimes out loud. "Please, God," he would say again and again. "You didn't bring us this far to stop now." One night, Dr. Kavita entered the room and found Rahim asleep on the chair, his hand still in Amina's. She gently woke him. "Rahim, bye. I need to show you something." He followed her to the monitoring room. She showed him a new scan. Bright. Colors marked the area where the tumor used to be. "It's shrinking," she said quietly. "Faster than we expected." Rahim couldn't believe it. "So, it's working?" Dr. Kavita nodded. "But we can't stop yet. The last 3 sessions are the most important. That's when we hit it hardest." The next day, something magical happened. During the 4th session, Amina suddenly opened her eyes wide and looked straight at the camera above her. The technician saw it and smiled. She wasn't just lying there anymore. She was fighting. The hospital staff began calling her the little warrior. Nurses brought her cards. Other patients waved at her when she passed. One boy undergoing treatment said to his mom, "If she can smile, so can I." Amina had become more than just a patient. She had become hope. After the final session, Dr. Kavita called Rahim and Zoya to her office. She smiled for the first time since they met. "It's done. The tumor is gone." Zoya gasped. Rahim covered his face and cried, quietly, like a father who had carried a storm in his chest for too long. "But remember," Dr. Kavita said, "the next 6 months are for healing and checkups. She's out of danger. But she needs rest and care." Zoya whispered, "We'll give her the world." That night, Amina sat up in bed for the first time in weeks. Rahim handed her a small mirror. She looked at her reflection, thin, pale, and tired. But her eyes still sparkled. She whispered, "Am I getting better?" Rahim kissed her forehead. "You didn't just get better, Amina. You beat it." But little did they know, the journey wasn't over yet. What the world had done for Amina, Rahim could never forget. And soon he would get a chance to give something back, something that would shock everyone. 3 weeks later, the hospital gates opened again, but this time it wasn't an ambulance that rolled out. It was a small van with colorful balloons tied to the side. Inside, Amina sat between her parents, wearing a light yellow dress and a soft smile on her face. Her pink cap was still on her head, but underneath it, new hair had begun to grow. She was going home. The same girl the doctors had once said had no chance. Now looked out the window with wide, curious eyes. As the van reached their village, something surprising happened. People had gathered outside Rahim's house. Neighbors, shopkeepers, school friends, even the old imam from the mosque. They were all there, holding flowers, clapping, some holding small signs that read, "Welcome back, Amina. Our brave girl. You are a miracle." Tears filled Rahim and Zoya's eyes. They had left the village in silence, with fear in their hearts. Now they returned with hope, and with the whole village cheering for them. Amina was too weak to walk alone, so Rahim lifted her in his arms and stepped out of the van. A small girl from the crowd ran up and gave her a drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands with a rainbow above them. Amina smiled and whispered, "Thank you." The crowd clapped louder. The imam stepped forward and raised his hands in prayer, thanking God for the child's life. That night, the house was lit with soft yellow lights. Friends and family sat close, sipping tea and sharing stories. But Rahim stayed quiet. He was thinking. After everyone left, he looked at Zoya and said, They all helped us. Not just with money, but with love. We can't forget that. Zoya nodded. So what do we do? Rahim looked down at Amina, now fast asleep in her bed. We give back, he said. Even if it's in a small way. The very next week, Rahim went to the town internet cafe with Samir, the nurse who had helped them earlier. He sat nervously in front of a computer and said, I want to start a page for others like Amina. They created a simple website called Hope Lives Here. It had just one message on the front. If you have a sick child and know where to turn, tell us. We'll fight with you. Within a few days, Rahim received his first message. A father from another village wrote, My son has leukemia. I sold everything. Please help. Rahim didn't wait. He took 10,000 from the leftover donation funds, money he had saved for emergencies, and gave it to the Hey, man, Zoya asked. What if we need it later? Rahim smiled. God didn't ask us how much we had when he helped us. Why should we? News began to spread. Rahim's name appeared in a small newspaper article titled, The Man Who Paid It Forward. People started messaging him, not just for help, but to donate. Within 2 months, Hope Lives Here had helped 9 families get medical care for their children. But even as life seemed full of peace, a phone call would soon arrive that would change everything. Rahim answered it one evening. It was Dr. Faizan. Rahim, bye, he said. You need to bring Amina back for her checkup. There's something we need to look at. Rahim's hand went cold. What is it, doctor? Dr. Faizan paused. I'm not sure yet, but it might be nothing, or it might be something we must act on fast. The next morning, Rahim packed a small bag. He didn't tell Amina everything, only that it was a routine checkup. But deep down, the fear was back. Would the storm return, or had God truly finished his work? The hospital felt different this time. No panic, no chaos. But Rahim's hands were still cold as he held Amina's file and walked into the examination wing. Zoya walked beside him, quiet, her heart pounding. Amina, now stronger, walked on her own, holding her stuffed rabbit and smiling at nurses who remembered her. Dr. Faizan was waiting with Dr. Kavita. Their faces were calm, but serious. Rahim. Bye. Please, sit down, Dr. Faizan said gently. They ran new tests, MRI, blood work, full scans. Amina didn't complain once. She was braver than before. She knew this place now. She trusted the people here. After the tests, they waited for hours in the small cafeteria. Zoya fed Amina soup, while Rahim sat frozen, staring at the elevator doors, waiting for the doctors to return. When Dr. Faizan finally entered, Rahim stood up immediately. Well? He asked, barely breathing. Dr. Faizan smiled slowly. It's gone, he said, completely. No signs. The scan is clean. Zoya gasped and covered her face. Rahim dropped into his chair, eyes filling with tears. Are you sure? He whispered. Dr. Kavita nodded. Yes, no tumor, no shadow, nothing. We waited to be absolutely certain. She is cancer-free. Amina tilted her head. That means I can go to school now? Everyone laughed, relieved, full of joy, full of life. But Dr. Faizan raised one finger. There's one more thing I want to tell you, he said, looking at Rahim. You remember the video you made? The one that helped raise the money? Rahim nodded slowly. Dr. Faizan continued. That video has reached over 2 million views. People around the world saw Amina's fight. Some of them were doctors, some were patients, some were just people who needed hope. Rahim blinked. Hope, Dr. Faizan smiled. Yes, and you gave it to them. That's not a small thing. Later that day, Rahim walked out of the hospital, holding Amina's hand in one and Zoya's in the other. There was no ambulance this time, no emergency, just a family stepping out into the world again, free, grateful, and stronger than ever. Back. Home, a small celebration was held in the village. Amina wore her favorite yellow dress again. Her hair had started growing. Her eyes were full of dreams. Rahim took the mic during the gathering. He looked at the people who had stood by them, family, friends, strangers who had become family. He said only one line. They said she had no chance. But God never needed permission. The crowd stood up and clapped, some with tears, some with pride. The story of Amina didn't just end with her healing. It began again, with the lives her story would go on to save. Because when one candle lights another, it doesn't lose its flame. It only lights the world.